Joining us, North Dakota Senator Heidi Heitkamp. And one of my fantasies, Senator, I thought you might, because of where you stand politically, I thought you might actually make up for one of the rhinos that the Republicans were going to lose in health care. I thought you might make up for it and vote for was that just what I called it, a fantasy, not going to happen?
That was really a fantasy, not going to happen.
What should we do then? Are you willing to work in some way to fix some of the parts of the Affordable Care Act that need fixing? Do you think that's something that does it have a chance of actually happening, Senator?
I think it does, actually. You know, I got here, I didn't vote for the Affordable Care Act, and I campaigned saying there's good and bad, let's fix the bad. And so I introduced bill upon bill. I went around, tried to shop that around bipartisan, and this has been such a partisan issue. What would be great is today we declaim the partisan debate about health care is done. Let's bring people together. And if I were in charge of this, there's 10 governors who sent a letter saying we want to sit down and be part of this discussion. Those governors have to administer these programs. They're bipartisan. Bring in the governors. Listen to what they have to say, and let's start fashioning this together. In the other bit of good news, Lamar Alexander suggested in a press release that he's going to start holding hearings in the Help Committee. So I think we're starting to see that dam break, and we're starting to see ideas percolate up. And I'd love to hear from the governors on what they think the fixes are. I've got a whole list of things that I've been trying to do. And so let's sit down and work this out. And so I'd like to say politically, let's just bury the political hatchets and let's start doing our job here.
The political hatchets are still being buried in the opposing parties' heads on both sides, and it still is happening. Let me ask it this way. So the Republicans decided to not take the recess right away, not necessarily for the Affordable Care, for tax reform, but for all these appointments. Now, you're more to the center than a lot of your colleagues. Do you think Senator Schumer would you be doing his job the way he's doing it right now? Are you content with the way he's running your party in the Senate right now? Do you think it's helpful to the country at this point?
I would love to see these nominations move more quickly. Unfortunately, we're at a spot where, we don't see, because so much attention's been on health care. If we, in fact, say health care, take the vote, let's move these nominations in an expeditious fashion, I think that we're being hurt in places like Homeland Security and Treasury and HUD by not having those nominees in place. And so I'd love to see those nominees expedited.
I mean, when you go to work every day and you see Senator Schumer and you see, Mitch McConnell, and you see what's going on, you think about, like, I don't know, what did you used to do before you were a senator? Is it looking good?
Oh, it's just another day in paradise. Every morning I wake up with a renewed sense of optimism, and it takes about an hour before I'm kind of like, it's not going so well.
I know.
Hey, Senator, but on this topic of Chuck Schumer, but you can put him aside. I don't know if you saw James Carville over the weekend saying that, we talked about it yesterday, that the Democratic Party doesn't have a leader right now. Do you think that's right?
I think we have a lot of leaders. I think that one thing that we don't have, and you see that borne out in public polling and when I'm out and about, is, so what do you guys stand for? What are you about? And, I can rattle off about 20 things that I think are critical and important, but I think the overarching discussion for the Democratic Party isn't there. And frequently that void is filled by someone who's the presumptive nominee. We don't have that. And so I think we're in this process of seeing opportunity for anyone to step up and start talking about what the Democratic Party stands for and what we intend to do. And honestly, it's very diverse. As you can imagine, I introduced the RAA with Senator Portman. That's not wasn't received very favorably by the progressive groups, but I think I can make an argument that it's got to be part of our discussion. I think I can make an argument that tax reform has to be part of our discussion. We just would do it differently. We have to do health care fixes. Let's have that discussion. And so I've always believed that good policy is good politics. And so too often we put the politics and the ideology ahead of getting things done. And you see it has just ground to a halt here in Washington, D.C.
Do you see yourself potentially voting yet with the Republicans on tax reform? Do you think that's going to happen? I mean, honestly, when it's all said and done, do you see yourself as a yes there?
I don't know what it is. You know, people ask me all the time, Joe, you know, are you going to, what do you think of tax reform? And I think, you know, I used to be the tax commissioner, so I know a little bit about it. But I say, tell me what it is. And then they look at me like, what do you mean? And I say, oh, is this where we broaden the base and lower the rates? And they go, yeah. And I go, tell me what it is. Are we going to see expensing exchanged for deductibility of interest? That's not good for agriculture. And so I'm going to evaluate whatever proposal comes my way based on what's good for my state and what makes sense, fiscally responsible sense in Washington, D.C. and for the country.
I think we had Jason Furman on, or I know we had him on, but I think he said that even if it was dynamic scoring would assume $300 billion, that he would think that that might be okay. You don't need a completely paid for tax cut. You could see something that's not totally revenue neutral that you might be able to vote for if it accomplished some things with corporate taxation and other things. You could go that way.
I think the last time that I was on, I think what I talked about is pairing this up with infrastructure, because infrastructure is just another way of accumulating debt. When you don't repair the roads and bridges and you pass them on to the next generation, that's passing on debt in my mind. And so let's put these two things together and let's talk about how we can, in fact, create a package that's good for the American economy. You know, it's interesting because you get a lot of argument from conservatives that public spending isn't stimulus, but yet tax cuts are. And so we're in this kind of philosophical debate. What I'm saying is there's a deal to be made. And I'd like to see the details of the deal before I'd ever commit to voting for it.
All right, Senator. When's the last time you were in Fargo?
I'm in Fargo all the time, Joe. All the time.
You know, one of the things that makes it so cool to watch is those scenes of just complete bleak. All you see is just snow and a couple of like electrical things.
Joe,
do you see that?
You're struck by the beauty of it. You're struck by the
you have to
awesome
have an eye for it.
Of those.
Were you back in December or January when it was a cold, like zero, below zero? Were you there for that?
I'm home all the time, and I love it. I think it's absolutely the most beautiful place.
I've never been there, and
why do you diss it all the time when you've never been there?
Diss it?
Yeah,
what are you talking
like,
about? I'm obsessed with it. I'm obsessed with it, and I'm obsessed with your accent. This is not dissing. This is love. This is jealousy that I'm not there. Senator, thank you.
Thank you.
Real
Take
good.
care, Joe.
You
it's
betcha.
Good to see all you guys.
You betcha.